Here's how the richest black women in Potomac actually live, and their lifestyles will genuinely shock you. We're talking about a woman who gave up a whole room of her mansion just to keep champagne in it, another who lost her house completely and then built her dream home from scratch, and a grande dame who went to prison and came back like nothing ever happened. Let's get into it. Number 8. Candy X Dillard Bassett. Let's start with a woman who got dragged for years over one single sentence and then went out and made sure nobody could ever say it again. Meet Candy X Dillard Bassett, former Miss United States, and comfortably the fastest mouth in the whole Potomac cast. But for seasons on end, her co-stars had one card they kept playing on her, and it landed every time. Because her mother Dorothy was the one paying the mortgage on her house. Now in most families, that's just a mother helping her daughter out. And honestly, good for her. But drop that fact into a group of women who quietly measure each other by whose name is on whose deed, and you've got yourself a weapon. They used it constantly. So in December of 2021, right after she married the chef Chris Bassett, the two of them went out and bought a place of their own in Upper Marlboro. Their names on the paperwork, nobody else's. And when you know how much grief she took over that mortgage, you understand that house was never really about the house. It was a receipt she could wave in somebody's face. Her fortune gets thrown around somewhere in the region of $4.5 million. Though I'd hold every number in this video loosely, because these figures come from celebrity net worth websites rather than anybody's actual accountant. What she built it on is genuinely broader than people give her credit for, because she's got a real music career that she funds herself, a pageant consulting business, a whole culinary brand alongside Chris, and a talent for producing quotable television that in this era is basically its own income stream. Candy X had to fight to get her name onto a deed. Further up this list, somebody had hers taken off one. Number 7. Robin Dixon. Could you go on national television, surrounded by women flexing mansions, and tell the entire country you lost your house? Robin Dixon did exactly that, and it's why her story is the best one in this whole lineup. Robin is married to Juan Dixon, a man who won a national championship at Maryland, went on to play in the NBA, and now coaches college basketball, so on paper this should be a very comfortable household. In reality, the Dixons went through a full financial collapse and lost their home. And rather than quietly vanish from the show and hope nobody brought it up, Robin sat there and talked about it openly, from a rented place, in front of a cast that absolutely noticed. Then she spent years grinding her way back. In 2021, she and Juan didn't just buy a replacement house either. They built a brand new one from the ground up, let the cameras watch it go up, and moved in with their sons Corey and Carter. When they finally got the keys, she posted a photo of the four of them standing in front of it and thanked God for the strength to weather life's challenges, which, coming from where they'd been, is not a throwaway caption. Her money now gets estimated around $3 million, and it comes from the show, her embellished hat line, some real estate, and the reasonably shady podcast she hosts with Giselle Bryant, which is essentially two women turning their group chat into a business. But here's what makes her different from everyone else you're about to meet. They can all show you a beautiful house. Robin's the only one who can show you the second one and tell you what it actually cost her to get there. Robin built her way back up out of the dirt. But what if you skipped the ground floor completely? Number 6. Ashley Darby. Forget mansions for a minute, because while the rest of this cast was out buying acreage in the Maryland suburbs, Ashley Darby was living up in the sky staring straight at the most famous skyline in American politics. From her penthouse, you can see the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Capitol Building, all three of them, from the living room. That's not a home so much as a postcard you get to live inside, and in a city where the entire property market runs on how close you sit to power, that view is the whole flex. You can't build it, you can't renovate your way into it, and no amount of money makes another one. Either you own that sightline or somebody else does. Ashley was Miss District of Columbia before any of this, and she married Michael Darby, an Australian real estate millionaire several decades older than her, which handed her the keys to a property and hospitality portfolio the rest of that cast could only talk about. Together, they opened Oz, an Australian restaurant in DC, and she's built her own things since, including a wellness and yoga brand. Speaking of turning a crown and a marriage into ventures of your own, a lot of it comes down to how the brain performs when it matters. That's the idea behind an audio series called The Genius Switch. It's based on the neuroscience of the flow state, that mode where focus and creativity click at the same time. And the whole routine is just listening with headphones a few minutes a day. It's a one-time $39, less than a single online course, and it's backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you can test it on yourself with nothing to lose. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to Ashley Darby, and what all of it actually added up to. Her net worth gets put around $5 million. Though I'll be straight with you, a good chunk of the lifestyle you watched on screen was tied to Michael's empire rather than hers, and the two of them have since divorced. Which leaves the question the show's been circling for a while, which is what she keeps and what she hands back. Whatever that settlement looks like, though, she worked out something none of the others did, because in the DC area, the real luxury asset was never square footage. It was the window. Ashley married her way into all of that. Now imagine never having to marry anything at all because your family got to Potomac first. Number 5. Katie Rost. Lists like this are usually wall-to-wall new money. Women who built it, married it, or televised their way into it. Katie Rost is the exception, and she's what genuinely old Potomac money looks like. She was born in Potomac in 1980 and raised right there in a wealthy biracial family that was properly stitched into the Maryland social scene. Her mother, Rinthia Rost, spent decades as a vice president of public affairs at GEICO, which is a serious corporate job and not a socialite title, and her father, Ronald, was German-American. Katie went to the best private schools around and, in Bravo's own words, was groomed to become a top doctor or a lawyer. She went off and became an international model instead, which I respect enormously. She moved to New York, built a real career out of it, landed on the Vogue 100 list, and then came home. Her personal fortune gets estimated around $3 million, but honestly that's the least interesting number attached to her, because what Katie inherited was never really cash. It was position. When her father died in 2000, the family set up the Ronald F. Rost Charitable Foundation in his memory, funding recreation and leadership programs for kids, and that's exactly what old money does. It builds an institution with the family name carved into it and lets the thing run for 50 years. Which gets at the real split in that town. Some people moved to Potomac because they finally made it. Katie Rost's family was already sitting there, hosting the ones who were still trying. Katie's money whispers. There's a house in Potomac where it absolutely does not, and there's a parrot living in it. Number 4. Monique Samuels. Monique Samuels married Chris Samuels, who spent a decade as an offensive tackle in the NFL and made 6 Pro Bowls doing it, which means this household got funded by one of the most physically punishing jobs in professional sport. The house matches the size of that paycheck. And she genuinely lives in Potomac, which matters a lot more than you'd think, and I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. The Samuels place is enormous, but what I find interesting is that she ran it like an operations center rather than a showroom. Several children, a full stack of businesses, and famously a pet parrot called T'Challa, who became such a fixture that he basically got his own storyline, which tells you everything about the level of noise that house was designed to absorb. Because Monique's entire brand was the working mother at scale. She launched Not for Lazy Moms, a product line aimed at women running a household and a company at the same time, which is about as far from a vanity perfume as it's possible to get. She recorded music too, and since leaving the show, she's moved into faith-based content and built her own platform for it. Her own money usually gets estimated in the low millions, sitting on top of Chris's career earnings, and together the household lands comfortably in the bracket this video is about. There is one thing everybody remembers about her, though, and it would be strange to skip it. Her time on the show ended after a physical fight with Candiac in Season 5 that got ugly enough to reshape the entire cast, and she chose to walk away from the platform rather than keep living inside it. Given what these shows tend to do to the people on them, that might quietly be the smartest financial decision anyone on this list has made. Monique's house ran like a machine. 4 solid years of contractor warfare is coming up, and it isn't hers. Number 3. Giselle Bryant. In March of 2019, Giselle Bryant bought herself a fixer-upper for around $900,000, and then the entire Potomac fan base settled in to watch her renovate the thing for what felt like the rest of the decade. People started calling it Hotel Giselle. In October of 2021, she went on Watch What Happens Live and announced the house was 95% finished. A viewer asked whether it was becoming another Chateau Chiret, which is a reference to the Atlanta housewife whose 5-year build turned into a national punchline, and Giselle shot that down on the spot. By October of 2022, she was insisting it was completely done. And by August of 2023, she was reportedly still adding finishing touches. Which is honestly the most relatable thing in this entire video. A woman on television, with real money, publicly losing a 4-year war against her own contractors. Look at what she got out of it, though. The house sits in Bethesda, about 20 minutes from Potomac proper, and she raised 3 daughters in it on her own after divorcing the megachurch pastor, Jamal Bryant. She turned the place into a working set too, throwing a launch party for the Reasonably Shady podcast in a tent in the garden while construction was still going on around her. Her closing line on her own Bravo house tour is perfect, because she says she hopes you like it and she doesn't really care if you don't, since she loves it. Her fortune gets put around $4 million, built on the show, the podcast, a merch line, and her Every Hue beauty brand, which she launched in 2016 and closed in 2020. So let's be honest that not everything on this list worked out. Now that Bethesda address brings up something you probably deserve to know before we get to the last two, because Potomac has a dirty little secret. Most of these women don't actually live in Potomac. Giselle's in Bethesda, Candiac is out in Upper Marlboro, Ashley's penthouse is in DC. Others have been based up in Baltimore and out in Carroll County. It's a show named after a town that barely any of the cast can genuinely claim. Which is exactly why the final 2 women are the real thing. Number 2, Charis Jackson Jordan. 9,200 square feet. 6 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, 2 full acres, a gazebo, a hot tub, a swimming pool, vaulted ceilings, and hardwood floors right through it, plus a security system serious enough to be worth mentioning in the listing. And then, somewhere inside all of that, Charis Jackson Jordan built herself a champagne room. Not a bar, not a wine cellar, an entire room in her house for champagne. That's the single most Potomac detail I came across anywhere in the research for this video. And it belongs to the woman the comedian Michelle Buteau once argued is the true grande dame of the whole town. Charis was married to Eddie Jordan for about 20 years, a man who played in the NBA and then coached in it, and she built her entire standing in Potomac on being the connector. She's the one throwing the extravagant parties, she knows the who's who of the whole DC area, and she's raised millions for charity along the way. When the show started, she was the person all the other women were friends through, which is a very specific and genuinely powerful form of social capital that doesn't show up on any balance sheet. She also delivered the best line anyone's ever landed about the Hugers' money troubles, calling Ray Huger the broke Bill Gates, which is the kind of sentence that ends a friendship permanently. The house has a bittersweet ending, though. That 20-year marriage came apart, Eddie moved up to New Jersey while Charity stayed in Potomac with their 2 kids, and the divorce went through in 2019, after which she posted that she was free at last. She listed the Potomac estate for $2.5 million, and they put the New Jersey house they'd bought for Eddie's Rutgers job on the market for $799,000. So the champagne room went up for sale. But she stayed in Potomac, and when you've got every reason and every resource to leave a town, choosing to stay tells you precisely what that address is worth to her. Michelle Buteau called Charisse the real grande dame. Trouble is, somebody else had already claimed that title, and she claimed it at volume. Number 1, Karen Huger. Karen Huger has been calling herself the Grande Dame of Potomac since 2016, and by every measure that counts on a list like this one, she's earned the right to keep saying it. She's generally reckoned to be the wealthiest woman in that cast, with estimates floating between roughly $10 and $14 million depending which site you trust. And the fact that there's a $4 million gap between those 2 numbers tells you plenty about how soft this data really is. Her husband Raymond built an information technology company called Paradigm, and he's been reported as worth considerably more than her on his own. She built her own things too, and people underrate this part. There's La Dame Fragrance, her perfume line, which she runs out of an office inside her own house. And on the Bravo tour, she points at that room and explains that Ray had wanted it for his workspace before she claimed the territory for La Dame instead. There's Icon by Karen Huger, her wig line. And she became the first woman in that Potomac cast to land her own Bravo spinoff, which in reality television is roughly the equivalent of getting a wing named after you. Now, the house and her property history might genuinely be the best storyline in this franchise, because it goes down long before it comes back up. The Hugers listed their original Potomac home in 2014 for $2.2 million and eventually sold it in 2016 for $1.685 million in cash, well under what they'd asked. Viewers had spent years openly mocking that kitchen as dated, and the family was working through tax problems at the same time. They moved out to a rented mansion in Great Falls for a reported $8,000 a month, partly so Karen could care for her ailing parents through their final years. Then, once her parents had passed, she went back. She sat on the reunion stage, looked at Andy Cohen, and announced that the Grand Dame had returned to claim her territory. And she meant that literally because she moved straight back into Potomac, leasing at first with an option to buy. The current house is reported somewhere around $2.3 million, and that place is exactly what you'd hope for. Stone exterior, a stately entryway, hand-scraped hardwood floors, marble, intricate crown molding, and custom woodwork running through the whole house. A blinged-out chandelier in the living room, because as she puts it, there's nothing like a good chandelier to pull a room together. A backyard she describes as her piece of heaven. And a state-of-the-art kitchen that she cheerfully calls the most wasted part of the house, because she doesn't cook and has never once pretended otherwise. Her exact words were that she doesn't cook, everybody knows that, but she does like a pretty kitchen. I do have to give you the difficult part because it's a matter of public record. In December of 2024, Karen was convicted of driving under the influence following an arrest earlier that year. She was sentenced to 2 years with one of them suspended, served roughly 6 months, and was released on the 2nd of September 2025. When she came back to the show, she addressed the whole thing on camera rather than hiding from it. Which is exactly why she closes out this list. Because the Grande Dame title was never really about owning the biggest house in Potomac, and she doesn't own it. It's about being the woman who sold the house, left the town, buried her parents, went to prison, came home, and still walks into every single room in that county like she's holding the deed to all of it. So that's how Potomac's richest black women actually live. Did you notice the pattern here? Because it's completely different from every other city we've covered. Atlanta money is loud and it performs for the camera. Potomac money trades in something else entirely, and that thing is proximity. How close you sit to the Capitol, to the old Maryland social register, to the right zip code, to the people who already have it. Cheris's whole fortune is a network of phone numbers. Katie's is a family name. And Karen's is a title she handed to herself and then spent 10 years defending against everybody who tried to take it. So, which one of them got you? The woman who built a room just for champagne, the one who lost her house and clawed her way to a brand new one, or the Grande Dame who went to prison and came back acting like she still runs the place? Drop it in the comments, I want to know. Hit that like button and subscribe to Black Status because we're just getting started.